Once upon a time there was a little engine called Edward. He lived in a shed with 5 other engines. They were all bigger than Edward and boasted about it. They said, "The driver won't choose you again. He wants big, strong engines like us." Edward hadn't been out for a long time, and he began to feel sad. Just then, the driver and fireman came along to start work. The driver looked at Edward and said, "What's the matter? Are you feeling sad? Would you like to come out today? And Edward said, "Oh yes, please." So the fireman lit the fire and made a nice lot of steam. Then the driver pulled the lever and Edward puffed away.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Railway Shed. Today we're going to be taking a look at none other than the Hornby Edward. This is a particularly special engine to me as I found it in 2021 still in a model shop for £60 brand new when these things had been discontinued in roughly 2018. So to find one for such a good price so late on was such a good find. So today we'll be taking a closer look at the locomotive, its packaging, its performance, and as well as its detail. Without any further ado, let's get on to Edward. Firstly, let's take a look at Edward in his box. This is the later release of Edward in the CGI style packaging, as we can see with the CGI render of Thomas here. For some reason, the locomotives don't have the name underneath them, only calling themselves Locomotive. Edward is R number 9289 and is DCC ready, like all the other tender engines such as James and Gordon in the Hornby range at least. On the back of the box we can see some of the range that was in stock at the time when this model released. This included Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James and Percy. It also showed numerous wagon and coach packs. Removing Edward from the packaging is rather easy. Edward is in the standard Hornby packaging at the moment, which consists of a plastic outer sheet as well as an inner sheet that keeps this model in position. Once Edward is removed from the sheet, he's exposed in this casing. With a simple lift of a tab, he is free. Let's take a look at him on the track. Here is Edward in all his glory on the layout. Let's take a look at some closer details. As with many of the Hornby toolings of the Thomas and Friends characters, Hornby used an existing tooling of engine to create the character. In this case, I believe Hornby used a D49. This is noticeable under the smoke box where you can see a holder that used to hold the cylinders for the D49. You can also see where the previous dome was moulded onto the locomotive. Aside from that, this locomotive has some great detail. It has mechanical lubricators moulded, as well as separately fitted handrails and a whistle. As like James and Gordon, Edward is a tender-driven locomotive. He shares the exact same tender as James and Gordon. Here you can see the similarities between the two, being that they're the same mould. Also, if you'd like to see a review of my 2016 James, please feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I'd be happy to make a video on it. Either way, this isn't James's video, so let's send him away. Edward also has some cab details, but you can't really see them, as the tender and locomotive is connected by a drawbar and set of wires. This is so that the locomotive can pick up power and feed it to the motor in the tender. The paintwork on this locomotive is extremely crisp, and all the lining is in place. The blue pops as well as the yellow accents. The tender also fits a NEM type coupling, which I've changed to a smaller type on my locomotive. You can also see there's a vacuum pipe fitted on the back. A weird detail about the Hornby tender engines, at least in the Thomas range, is that they have their lamp brackets upside down, with the bigger ends pointing outwards when they should be underneath the model. The face is pretty accurate to Edward, and I think it's a decent representation of the character. Now we've taken a closer look at Edward, let's take a look at his performance. Here is Edward down on the track. Let's give him a tad power to see how he moves. In reverse. We can see he's an incredibly slow runner, which is very good. Let's go forward this time. I do find these newer models particularly smooth. And back once more. Now we've seen his performance, I think it best that we let Edward have his day out and pull his train. Don't you? Thank you so much for watching. It's been really fun to take a look at this locomotive, as it's probably one of my better running ones. Please remember to like, subscribe and comment what you thought about this locomotive. Also, feel free to join our Discord server, which is linked in the description. So, without any further ado, let's let Edward go.
I'm going out again tomorrow. What do you think of that, But he didn't hear what they thought, for he was so tired and happy that he fell asleep at once.